Hello, everybody. This is Chris DiCenso calling. 1 o'clock. I like starting on time, but we're going to wait 30 seconds. We got a bunch of people I can see just joining, and so in about 30 seconds, we're going to start. In the meantime, we will record this. We will send out the presentation, and you'll get that probably in a day or so. And also, if there's any questions that you'd like to ask, there should be in your window there, at least in my case, on the right side, where it says questions. You can type in some questions. We'll try to get through them throughout the presentation, but if not, we'll deal with it at the end. So just give us like 10 seconds and we're going to start right up. All right, I got 102. Easton, why don't you get us going?
All right, no problem. Welcome, everyone, to the NASGW and Growth Strategy Partners webinar. You might notice that this is not your usual welcoming voice in Kenyon Gleason. Apparently, it is difficult to attend webinars and hunt simultaneously, so I have stepped in. My name is Easton Kaboshik. I have the pleasure of serving you and all NASGW members as the program manager for the new NASGW Scope program, which I'll mention a little bit more here shortly. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending. These webinars are one of the many ways that NASGW tries to provide value to two-step distribution into our membership. So it's important that you're here. We appreciate that you're here. And I know that you're in for a very a good session as usual. Also want to thank Growth Strategy Partners. They're the ones who really make this possible. And Chris and his team are just experts. If any of you've had the opportunity to work with them, I'm confident that you're aware of that. So lastly, before we kick it off and get started, Kenyon asked that I share a few updates on his behalf and on behalf of NASGW. First of all, as you know, the NASGW Expo is coming up here very quickly, just a couple of weeks. So October 16th through 19th, we will see you in Pittsburgh. So far, we have around 1,200 attendees, 275 exhibitors. It's going to be a really great program. So we're excited about that. If you have any questions about the agenda or sessions or the awards banquet, things like that, the information is available at nasgwexpo.org. Couple highlights of changes this year or programs you should make a point to attend. On Tuesday, there will be Range Day. We had one last year, and we'll be having another one this year. So far, we have about 125 people registered for that event. It's an excellent venue. It's just going to be, if you're in there or in Pittsburgh on Tuesday, a day early, and want to get some shooting in, that'll be a great place to do that. And lastly, most importantly for me, is the Scope program. So NASGW will be launching the NASGW Scope, which is a new program. Sorry, if you're looking at the screen there, I didn't actually say that. Our marketing team was pretty clever. We'll be launching Scope at the show this year on Thursday morning before the show opens. So Scope is the largest source of sales and inventory data ever created for the shooting sports industry. We've partnered with 20 distributors so far. That number will continue to grow. They're all contributing their weekly sales and monthly inventory snapshots that are all analyzed and presented in this outstanding, powerful tool. We're estimating around 50% of the total volume represented so far, depending on the category. Firearms, ammunition, optics, and accessories will all be included in this program. Lastly, just again, if you're interested in learning more and hearing detail about the data, asking questions, so on and so forth, there will be a launch event, again, Thursday morning at 7:30, Auditorium 406 at the Convention Center. And we'll actually have Chris speaking there as well on how to use data to drive your business and how Scope can be used in your day-to-day sales and operations planning, marketing, so on and so forth. So really a powerful tool. NASGW is really excited about this program. It's going to be a great opportunity for the industry, for two-step distribution, and for all of our members. So hopefully, if you enjoy Chris today, you'll want to come see him again that morning, not to put you on the spot, but otherwise, thank you so much again for being here. Very excited to have you for this presentation and at the show, and I hope to see you in Pittsburgh. Chris, I'll pass it back over to you.
Ethan, hey, thanks very, very much. You know, we're excited about your Scope program. A lot of what we do, you know, is helping businesses grow. We like data. It's nice to use data than making up stuff about what's going on. So having data, I think, is going to be very helpful. And we'll share a little about that with you today, and also again at the NSCW on Thursday morning. You get to hear me again. So thanks, Easton, and thanks NSCW for supporting us on this and sponsoring this. So let's get started. So here's the thing I want to, one of the points I want you to take away today. You drive the performance of your company. You determine how successful it's going to be or not. This is a quote from Bain & Company, which is a very large consulting firm that works with Fortune 500 very public companies, and they asked their executives, why didn't you achieve your strategic growth goals? And 75% of them said because they didn't have a good plan, they weren't aligned to that plan, and they had poor decision making. It was all about internal components of the business, not competition, not the market. It was about what they did internally, how aligned they were in growing the business. And that's going to be important for you today, not just with this webinar, but anything you do. If you internally as a team are more aligned, more focused, make better decisions, you will be more successful than anybody else. And when it comes to it, you're really about beating the competition. So just keep that in mind, not only today, but everything else that's going on in your business. Today, we want to share with you some insights. How can you improve the growth and performance of your business? But also, again, motivate you to take action. You're here listening, you're learning, but hopefully you're going to take this and go apply it to your business. Now, we're going to go through some introductions. I'll explain who's with us today. We'll talk about what the situation is today as we see it in the shooting sports industry. We'll talk about strategic planning. How should you take that information and build your plan? But then we're going to cheat. And we're going to share with you what we think the 4 goals should be for your company, at least 2 or 3 of them, if not all 4, and explain why, and then we're going to summarize. Now, just to give you a sense of who's listening today, we have presidents, we've got about 28% president CEOs attending. We've got 43% in the sales and marketing arena, about 8% in the operational space, and then 22% across other different disciplines. We've got more manufacturers. We've got 54% manufacturers attending and 23 distributors, and then there's a third or so of everything else. So that gives you a little sense. The other thing, just again, a little personal note from me, to me, there's a lot of what I call social unrest going on in the world today. I'm not going to get into the details of this, but also keep in mind that you are an ambassador to the shooting sports. So all your marketing, all your sales, all your tweeting, all your comment, you know, that impacts the perception of the shooting sports industry. And obviously we want to make that as positive as possible. So try to make what you do as positive as possible. Let's tell you about who you're going to be listening to today. That's me, the best looking guy at the top, Chris DiCenso. I have been really working on improving the performance of businesses since I started working for Sturm, Ruger & Company back in the 80s, and that is translated now into not just manufacturing performance, but strategic growth. How do you take a business to the next level and grow it strategically? And we've done this with a lot of companies in the shooting sports industry. We've built a lot of strategic plans, and we help take them to the next level. And kind of what I'm going to help share with you today is, you know, pulling this all together. What are we seeing? What are we doing? And how's it going to impact you? George, you there?
I am here. I serve as the distinguished member of the group simply because I am the oldest member of the group. Yeah, well, hey, you know, it is what it is. But a real quick brief, I've spent my entire life involved in firearms, and the early stages was training and competitive shooting. 1990, I co-founded the SIG Sauer Academy and got into the corporate end of things, and I did dual duty with product design testing, going out and meeting customers and seeing what their desires were, what they'd like to see us build, and that kind of stuff. And over the years, I've expanded into just about every other area of the firearms business. And currently, I consult in the industry. I do expert witness work for legal cases. I write for Shooting Illustrated. I've got 2 columns a month in that, and Concealed Carry magazine as well. And Chris and I have been associated since 2011, where we decided that we had some parallel interest, and it's worked out very well. We've had over 25 companies that we've jointly worked together with, and we've increased their profits and the overall health of the companies. So don't have any hint of quitting anytime soon. Enjoy this. It's my passion. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Paul Mangano. Yeah, Paul Mangano. Currently have my own consulting firm, but prior to that, starting 2 years ago, I was basically over 30 years in the aerospace, defense, and security business. And I worked for industry leaders, including Honeywell, Northrop, Smith Aerospace, and most recently, L3 Technologies. And at L3, I was president of, I got to the point where I was president of 3 business units. One that included optics and rifle scopes, another that had thermal devices, thermal cameras, and then the other was in-car video systems that included not only the dashboard, but the body camera, as well as evidence management, license plate recognition systems, and that sort of thing. So I have a pretty good feel for the sports shooting market, the law enforcement market, public safety market, and then obviously having worked with some of these leaders in the defense business, I have a fairly good, strong understanding of that. And my current consulting practice is primarily providing, guidance, leadership, consulting to help smaller companies in the industrial product space, transform their operations, not only on the front end of the business in terms of strategic planning, marketing, sales, business development, business capture, but also the back end of the business, including, operational excellence, Lean Six Sigma, and that sort of thing to drive operational improvements on that side of the business. So I've had sort of a relationship with Chris and George over the last few years, and enjoy working with them.
And we've had, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago, we met when you were at EOTech L3, and we were talking strategy, and, we connected then, and we've kept in touch over the years, and even just recently doing a lot more discussions about growing businesses, acquiring businesses, selling businesses, and strategic thinking. So we thought Paul would be a great addition to today's webinar. So thanks, Paul. Real quick on Growth Strategy Partners, if I can get my slide to work. The firm here, our focus is on helping businesses grow, take their performance to the next level. And we've done some research on how to do that. We've got these 7 keys to growth, kind of the foundation. What we've done, we've got some core people that we work with, and then we've got a bigger expanded team. And so we'd look, to bring whatever resources to help you, those listening, on how to grow the profits and revenue of your business. We've been very happy to see we've been averaging 220% profit improvement and a return on professional fees. That's the ROPF of over 7 times. So you give us $100, we'll give you $740 back. Not a bad deal, right? As you go through today or in the future, if you maybe need help from us or want to get connected to others, please give us a call. If we don't know anybody, I know George knows everybody. All right, let's get into the agenda. Let's talk about the current situation. I think, Paul, you're going to lead off with this.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. I think the key thing here is, the word new normal has been used for several years now, and I think it's sort of difficult to define what that is. But, in short, what I think it is, it's more that the degree of competition in the industry is intensifying. It's not business as usual. There will be ebbs and flows in the marketplace that'll be just sort of difficult to manage. It'll be somewhat bounded by smaller incidences, whether it be regulation or a smaller type attack here or there, but really don't see any large swings unless there's coming election in 2020 and things look to be going in a different direction, or if there's a major terrorist type attack. Obviously, the market now is, I think NICS checks came out yesterday, and they were basically flat year over year, through the course of this year. It's still not showing a huge uptick or an uptick, but it is still considered to be, on a month-to-month basis, one of the top 5 months year over year. So the business is semi-healthy from that standpoint. But again, I think it's interesting to look at American Outdoors and Sturm and Ruger to see someone who's maybe not doing as well, is represented here by the financials, but then one who is performing a little bit better in the marketplace, because I think it's, it has a very rigorous business strategy they're executing very well on. And I think American Outdoor Brands may be an example of a company who's sort of struggling a little bit to, execute that strategy. In terms of some current trends, obviously there's increase in government regulation, the whole thing about the bump stocks. And then you've got the issues going on in California where they're going to raise the age requirement. And then I'm sure there'll be some other states to follow. And then also in California, they're looking at ammo licensing starting in January of this year. So I think the key thing there is, potentially what else might be coming down the line in terms of regulation, and then potentially where. I think another element of the current situation is there just appears to be a ton of innovation and technology integration. I particularly noticed it, obviously in the rifle and pistol market, but even more in the rifle scope, night vision, the use of apps for some of these applications, and, the integration of technology is on the rise. There does seem to be a greater focus on market segmentation and positioning. I thought Crimson Trace, a couple of weeks ago came out with their new red dot line. So they're basically entering an adjacent market, but at the same time, they've done a very, very good job in positioning it in certain segments of the market, down to 3-gun shooting and that sort of stuff. So as you get more involved in this presentation, you'll see that really understanding the markets and the customers, it's going to, separate the winners from the losers. And then I've seen, the competition for talent is pretty aggressive out there. Given the current situation, product development, product management, and marketing talent are in great demand, as are operations executives. And then 2, growth opportunities I see are 3. One is obviously the enormous aftermarket opportunity with all the guns in the inventory. There's 16 million ARs alone. So that becomes a very attractive platform. And then I think it was Selkirk a couple of years ago did a survey on, average consumer expenditures of gun owners, and it was on the order of $1,000 per year. So that's an average. So that basically says, given the health of the economy, that number may be up, even in terms of the cost of money or the inflation. But basically says that there's a lot of opportunity out there to upgrade what's already there. And then one other big one is the relaxed export controls. I think that's going to be very big, particularly for some of the smaller companies who, wanted to stay away from it because of the demands, the rigors, and the legal risks associated with that. And what the new administration has done is to make that barrier very, very much less onerous. And I think it'll bode well for those who don't drive a lot of international revenue.
Yeah, and speaking to that, the elections coming up, the midterm elections next month, are going to affect what's going on as well. I mean, you listen to the news media, and everything is woe is me, and who knows. But if we get Congress converted over to the left a little bit more than where they already are, we can probably expect to see some of these regulations that have been relaxed, maybe put back in place. So it's going to be a little tit for tat until we see what how the elections how they fall out next month. And one other thing on the talent, the big deal these days, and particularly up in the Northeast where I am, is getting the very best people and paying them and doing whatever you can to keep them. Because I'm seeing in the major gun companies people jumping ship left and right from one to the other, and in some cases going back, and it's just absolutely amazing at the competition, particularly in the engineering end of things. So we'll talk a little bit later in this program about employee engagement and how we need to keep our employees satisfied and where they are, and how to keep the good employees.
So George, based on that comment and the current situation here, take this now projected forward. What's your your guesstimate, your forecast for the future? Not necessarily in units of volume, but up, down, flat, really up, really down. What you're thinking?
I think it's going to be a slight increase. The days of everything going up at a very acute angle I think they're done. Unless we have some catastrophic world event or something that causes everybody to be uneasy, if you will, we're not going to see any dramatic increases or actually decreases as far as that goes. But I think we're still going to be on the upward swing, and
slow upward,
we've got people putting out good stuff, and one of the things that we'll talk about later too is communication. I see a lot of people throwing up websites. Okay, good, it's a good website. How do you get those people out there, your potential customers, to come and look at your website? There's got to be a degree of communication to the outside world to entice these people in. Same thing with gun shops or anything else. We have to work to bring the people to us. We can't just sit there and wait for them to show up. That's going to be the new normal, if you will.
Well, what we're doing here is going through, we're going to eventually get to these 4 goals, but the question is, how do we get to these 4 goals? And the first thing we need to do is understand what's going on today and what their concerns are. In fact, what we're going to do, I'm actually going to ask the audience, is this something in the game show? Ask the audience, what keeps you up at night? I want to take a quick poll and like you to click on one of these options. What keeps you up at night? Is it generating sales? Is it the competition? Is it introducing new products, the need to continuously introduce new products, manage the inventory, the working capital, the cash in the business, managing people? George just talked about managing people. Click on one of these if you would, and we'll share that with you to see what do you think? What's keeping most people up at night? And then we'll see if that links into the 4 goals that we think are going to be needed going forward. Give me another 10 seconds. So if you're going to vote, please vote now. If you're sitting in a room with 4 or 5 people, do the quick raise your hands and pick one, because we're going to close this thing up, and we're going to talk about this real quick. So let me do this real quick. Okay, so let's. I'm going to close this up and show you what the results are.
Wow.
So, Paul just said, wow. You want to explain your wow?
No, it came up. No, I can't explain it. I thought sales was going to be more when it first came up, but then I guess other people inputted it. So that was my expectation. So that's why I said wow.
Now, sales is number 1, right? Followed by products and inventory. you know, I'm assuming, okay, since we have, I can't find my number here again, but well, 43%, the majority of the listeners are on the sales side, so I assume that's what they're worried about. But that makes sense. I mean, you know, that we're talking about what's the challenge going forward. The challenge is how are we going to generate sales? That's a valid concern. The biggest concern, inventory and products, is going to be the next one. So keep that in mind. Let's move forward. Let me show you, at least in our mind, you know, how would we summarize the current situation? I think, Paul, you were going to give a quick summary of this here, kind of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I won't spend too much on it, but I think maybe I'll add to what you know, George said. Is, you know, I think sort of modest growth going forward, but I think in terms of planning, it'd be always good to have in your hip pocket, you know, a flat scenario or even a downside scenario to the 5% down range, just so that you can get ahead of things and be in a position to move quickly should you know, the train start to get off the track. You might even want to look at an upside scenario beyond the moderate growth should, you know, the same thing happen on the plus side. And I think you know, this sort of summarizes the fact that it's going to be very much about capturing share, you know, stealing business or being smarter than the competition in terms of identifying markets or customers in order to, you know, maintain your revenue or to look to grow it and increase market share. So, you know, I think that's really the punchline.
Agreed, right? I mean, it's going to be more challenging, right? We've had our fun years. Now you know, I'd say we got to work for it, whether you call it the new normal, Trump slump. So as you go through the strategic planning process, before we get to the 4 goals, what we typically do now is say, let's take that, put it into our strategic planning process, and look at that, and then how is that going to impact, you know, the goals we set. So where this goes is that typically around this time of the year is when, you know, all our clients and most companies, with the December year end, start the strategic planning process, set goals for next year, if not the next 3 years. This is the process, you know, that we use to help facilitate strategic plans for our clients. And, you know, you see in the top left-hand corner this external analysis. That's kind of what we're talking about now. Assess what's going on, then get into the vision, and then define the future. Now, what was the thinking behind the scenes was, instead of presenting to you the strategic planning process and here's what you got to do, you know, and the reason why we had a little shift in this is we took a poll at one of these events a while ago and asked most of the executives here, how sophisticated is your strategic planning process? And what you'll see here is over 60% answered that it was average. It was okay. We had some goals. We had some strategies. So we're thinking, you know, we're trying to help you, you know, improve the performance and growth of your business. You know, we could preach all day about the need for strategic planning, but many of you don't have it and do it well. Well, fine. How about we do our kind of internal analysis, you know, and figure out what common themes we see across the industry and what's needed, you know, for you as a executive in a firm. And so that's how we got into this, set the 4 goals. And so now what we're doing is we're going to take into account the current situation, but, you know, we talk about goal setting. Some of the foundations we look at is, let's set some goals that directly target what the challenges are, okay? Let's do something that I call foundational. You know, this is the basic blocking and tackling that every company needs to do well to be successful. You know, I've visited a lot of very high-performing companies, and when I ask them, you know, how are they doing so well? What's the cool, funky stuff that they're doing, and robots and intelligent automation and all that? The answer is we just do the basics very, very well. And then balanced. And the point of balanced is not all sales goals, you know, not all financial goals, you know, balanced. So we use a framework called the balanced scorecard, which gets into the financial goals, customer-oriented goals, process-oriented goals, and people-oriented goals. So what we do is we're doing this. We're going to say, let's take the current situation. Okay, so we did a kind of a quick analysis looking at what's the current situation, what are the pieces of this. This is that kind of external analysis. And then across the top here, you'll see, you know, types of goals. What types of goals could, or typically do companies focus on? So customer niches, differentiating their company, their products and services, sales and operations planning, that's the S&OP. New product introduction, that was one of the challenges that keeps you up at night. Marketing, branding, engaging your employees, increase capacity, leadership training, which to me is part of that people side, geographic expansion. There'd be a whole list of them. And so we just did a real quick analysis and saying, okay, here's all the situations on the left, here's the goals on the right, where's there a matchup? And what you'll see is, you know, 4 or so kind of jump out at us. In fact, the one with the most points, if you will, in our analysis is sales and operations planning. But I've highlighted the 4 that we think are going to make a huge impact to you as a listener, because it's not only consistent with the situation going on, but we see this quite often in all our clients. And the fact is, they don't do a good job focusing on niche customer segments. They try to sell everything to everybody, which, by the way, you know, when you talk about your biggest challenge being sales, well, who are you focusing on? Who's that customer? And then the second piece is, well, how well are you differentiating your products and services and what you offer? Whether you're a manufacturer or distributor, how unique is what you're offering? And, you know, to be personally honest with you, many in the industry don't do a good job at it. Sales and operations planning, okay, you know, we've got an issue with supply and demand in this industry. You know, the 2-step to an ASUW is a piece of that. I think this data with Scope that they're putting out is going to be very helpful for us to get some data around it, but how do you balance supply and demand? And then the last one being employee engagement. You know, this is a tough environment for people, whether you're looking for CNC operators, gunsmiths, or warehouse operators. It's a very difficult situation, and therefore, you know, we'll talk about engagement as a way to build that culture and morale at the company to be successful. So let's go through these 4 goals a little more, explain to you where they came from and why. Well, actually, no, what they are. I think, Paul, you're doing this one?
Yeah, I'll do this one. Yeah, like I said earlier, I think, you know, the real fight out there in the new normal will be this war for share and growth. You know, and a big part of that is going to be who can better identify the niche markets and who can better satisfy customer needs within those niche markets, as well as the needs within those unique customer segments. And sort of like what Chris said, you know, it's really, really important to understand you can't peanut butter spread and try to be all things to all people. To be successful, you know, on the sales and marketing front is you really, really need to do a very focused and intense job in identifying those markets and customers where you know, really have the depth and understanding of the needs, requirements, purchasing behaviors, and such of those particular customers. That'll allow you to capture share, and that's what is going to allow you to be much more successful rather than trying to, like I said, go after everything. What I like to do too when I look at it is, you know, we say customer, and in our particular industry, there is the customer, which tends to be the wholesalers, distributors, and detailers. They're the actual customer, but obviously the demand is generated, you know, on the consumer side. So, you know, this chart, Southwick, you know, did this analysis a couple of years ago, and they did a very, very, very good job on it in terms of really trying to narrow down into the various, you know, niche customers or consumers. And what the real focus here was, or the real value add, was their ability to, you know, come up with customer classes where the motivation matches, you know, their specific purchase drivers. You know, what is it they're looking for? How much they're willing to pay? How complex should is the product? How simple is it to use? Is it smaller? Is it lighter? Is it heavy? Can it be serviced easier, and that sort of stuff? So in terms of easy to learn how to use. So in each and every one of these cases, it's, you know, the ability to generate demand or go and attract that customer is going to be very, very different in most cases. There'll be some things that are common, but in a lot of instances, you know, they're likely not to be. who some might not be as comfortable with social media. Others might not be, comfortable with handling weapons. So how do you, address that? So it really creates a problem for industry in terms of how do you go after, how do you generate that demand, how do you service that customer? And even beyond, the Southwick report, even within each of those categories, you can probably identify subcategories or subset segments of this consumer market. And, that's what even a more additional research is going to allow you to identify. And some of the things I've seen done in the past, in this industry, some of the, depends on your resources and things, but, in a couple of instances, we used online surveys that were fairly effective in terms of getting some customer inputs on, new product ideas. Obviously, people use the approach staff route, the advisory board route, and certain user groups are another way to do this. We actually did a couple of focus groups, which were, sort of difficult to do, but they can be done, and we got some good data. And then one of the things I've obviously seen done to get even more definition of customer needs and wants and what their expectations are, not only in terms of products, but as, you as a company is, you host surveys at SHOT Show or NASGW or NRA, and sent them to come, and you got a pretty good audience there, and they're able to attract a number of people and get their inputs. So as much as there's this opportunity on the consumer side, it's very important to understand the true customer side. Is the wholesalers, distributors, and dealers, and obviously their motivation, and I think it's pretty simple. Their motivation is to make money and how to become more profitable. So in terms of that side of the customer equation, not the consumer, the things that enter into that need to satisfy their requirements is, turning around orders, how simple it is to place an order and get delivery. Can you extend payment terms? Can you get volume pricing? Are the sales programs, competitive? Are you any service or returns? Is it done in a quick turnaround fashion so that there's no customer dissatisfaction and that sort of thing? So there's a whole boatload other there as well. And, I think in terms of targeting those is, do you sell to the internet retailers? Do you go to all the big box? Do you go to all, have you established key accounts and that sort of thing? And, in my experience, there's certain key customers that we didn't have that we had to go out and attack. There were certain other customers that we needed to get, and we made a deliberate effort to go out and do that. In fact, one of our key performance indicators was key customer capture. So, and then there's also the market segment side. I guess the Southwick survey, they are sort of market oriented, but then you can look at, law enforcement. The rules of the game there are somewhat different than other places. So do you understand that market in terms of, where you're going to play, how you're going to win, and it's sort of a similar thing in defense as well as the international marketplace. The other thing that comes down in terms of market segments would also be, where is growth anticipated because of external events or new requirements? And one of the ones that comes to mind here is I noticed there's an increased focus on non-lethal weapons, primarily as a result of school shootings. And it's being looked at as an alternative to having guns in facilities, or it's being used as an alternative to guns. And then the other is personal protection. Those people who really don't want to have a gun but would like to have that security, even though a pepper ball might not be the same as a bullet. Some people are just more comfortable going that route. And so there are companies out there, 3 of them in particular, that are focusing quite a bit of attention on that, and that's Pepperball, SDI, and Kimber. They're looking at that. And then the other means of market segment is actually trying to create a niche for yourself. And, that could all maybe be explained in the Pepperball case or the but also the weapon-mounted camera for law enforcement. You see what Veridian's doing there. They're trying to, they see an opportunity to maybe go capture some share of the, you know, the evidence management system marketplace with a pistol-mounted or weapon-mounted camera to satisfy the need there and differentiate themselves in terms of capturing new business. And obviously, I mentioned earlier.
Sorry, is that? I mean, what you're getting at, Paul, is that they're targeting some niche segments, right? I mean, they may have some products that they're driving, but they're targeting some niche segments to try to capture market, to capture sales, right? Sure. The poll we said earlier, what keeps people up at night is sales. You know, my question to you listening is, you know, how well do you really think you target niche segments? This is just an example. Paul explained a bunch of other ways to kind of slice it. But, you know, I use my 1 through 10 scale. You know, a 10, you know, we've got every niche identified and we target it uniquely. And, you know, 1 is what's a niche? You know, where are you listening? You know, how well do you do this? This is what's going to be needed to improve sales going forward. But I want to move on just because of time. Let's go into the next.
Let me throw one quick thing in here. The thing of doxing has now become very popular all of a sudden, and for people that have money and that have some status in the world. So we need to look at the communication, the news media, and that kind of stuff, and that helps to guide us a little bit. Personal protection is becoming more important right now, just due to this recent event of doxing, which is going to get worse and worse and worse. So just put that in your mind as far as where you might want to go and where you may want to take your company. Okay, I'm done. Go ahead.
All right, we got to catch up now on a few other slides. Let's talk about number 2, which is product and company differentiation. And Paul, you've got that one, I think, also.
Yeah. The product differentiation, company differentiation, there are some similarities, but in the product differentiating realm, it's all about, you know, how do you make your products more attractive to that particular target market? So in the case of what we just discussed, you know, what features, benefits, value do you need to bring to your products in order to better serve those 8, you know, let's say, consumer markets that Southwick came up. And, you know, it's all about how do you differentiate that from your competitors' products, but also maybe how do you differentiate it from your own products? You know, do you make, you know, modifications to an existing platform, or do you come out with a totally new product, or do you do a combination of both? And I'm sure most people say it's a combination of both. But the real, you know, drive here is, you know, how to convince customers of the superiority and uniqueness of your product to create a competitive advantage. I mean, that's what it's all about. You know, there's a whole host of ways to do it, whether individually or in some collective fashion. But, you know, you talk about the design, the price, you know, performance, quality, features, looks, complexity, reliability, service. I thought it was interesting to read this week where Loophole has set up a service center in Europe, you know, to meet demands of its European customers. You know, that's sort of a bold step. You got color, and then even packaging. And I sort of have a good example of packaging whereby, you know, we had a very high-tech product, but the packaging was cheap and flimsy cardboard that came from China. And so we made a decision to, you know, go from this extremely cheap, flimsy approach that cost cents, and we replaced it with a Pelican case, even though it cost $5 more than what we were paying. And in addition, we improved the content of the box to include a better manual, scope code, a lens pen, and a cleaning cloth. And it absolutely had no impact on demand, and it better represented who we were and the complexity and sophistication of our product. So, you know, in short, the key things of product differentiation are, you know, it creates value. You know, it's not all about lowest price. You know, it's how do you develop a product or features that help you defend higher prices? You know, how do you put in features in there that allows you to introduce non-price competition where people will buy your product independent of the price because it has these particular features. What can be done in terms of creating that brand loyalty? And then what can be done to create a perception that there's no substitute or close substitute products. Great. And then on the company, you got a comment, Chris?
Well, sorry, go ahead. We just got to get moving though.
Yep. Company differentiation, it's very similar, but how are you recognize the industry by your customers and consumers? And the way I always looked at that is focusing on your single greatest core competency. Some examples might include you're the product or technical leader, you're the low-cost provider, you're the quality leader, and then you're the brand leader. And then I think one that's, obviously too is in this industry, the strength of the culture. There's a lot of companies where most of the employees there come from the shooting sports and are passionate about it. So again, it's the company differentiation is always about maybe picking one key area to focus on relentlessly, always continuously improve it and focus a ton of resources on it so that you really truly are the best and it's recognized by the industry and your customer set.
So those listening, again, ask yourself, ask others in the company, what makes us unique, what makes us special, and do you get the same answers? Again, this is something we think that, could be significantly improved, obviously, by many companies, but a lot here in our industry. Focus on customer segments, niche targeting as a goal, product and company differentiation. The third one is operational efficiencies through sales and operations planning. So sales and operations planning is really a balancing of an integration and balancing of demand and supply. This is a sales and operations planning framework. I'm not going to go through it. But we have challenges with demand in this industry and balancing the supply with it. The whole inventory excess in 16, now we're trying to get that down. Sales and operations planning is a way to balance and maximize, I'll say your fill rate, and help you get operationally more efficient. The scope data that Easton talked about earlier, again, you can bring data in to understand, well, how much inventory should we have and what's the forecast going to look like? But, the key impact here is that, by applying S&OP, you can get sales up and you get costs down and working capital down, which are some of the challenges that you talked about keeping you up at night. The other thing, why we brought S&OP into this is, again, we did a survey in our earlier webinar, and there's a large percentage, 85% of those people that replied said they're not doing a good job with sales and operations planning. We're working with clients right now, helping them implement sales and operations plans because it's complex, but done right will make a huge impact on the performance and profitability of business. So sales and operations planning is the third goal. The fourth goal, back to balance is employees. Employees are extremely important, kind of the first thing we would start with in terms of improving an operation, and they have to be engaged. And so let's talk a little about engagement. And I think, George, you're going to talk about this, right?
Yep. Well, bottom line is your people are top to bottom are the key to your success. And it starts right at the top with leadership. If leadership is open and honest and communicates and also listens, that kind of sets the stage for the way the whole thing operates. Pay and benefits, that's obvious. You've got to pay people, commensurate with what they do. One of the things you can do to keep people is offer bonuses. Give them key goals, and if you meet these goals, you get a significant bonus. And job security, pretty important. Safety, pretty important. Everybody likes to be recognized. I've seen any number of places where just simple recognition, a pat on the back, thank you for doing a good job, face to face from the managers or the higher ups is really all that people need. One of the things on the advancement thing, make sure you're getting the right people to do the right thing. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people that were promoted to managers that were really good technicians, but they were pathetic managers. So you know, that's something that will either deflate morale or inflate morale. You know, you got to put the right people in the right places. The other thing, as far as organizational clarity with the well-defined roles, try not to just do the shotgun approach because one guy's good at one thing. You know, just give him more and more and more until the straw breaks the camel's back. That kind of defeats the whole thing. One of the biggest things in my entire experience in anything I've ever done is passion. If your people are passionate by the way they work and for who they work and on and on and on, and that comes from the leadership. You know, if the leadership is passionate, the whole idea will go from top to bottom. And of course, that leads to commitment, and give the people a little bit of leeway to make some discretionary effort. I mean, the guys running the machines, if you've got machines, or the guys running the packing or whatever, they know that job better than anybody else. They'll make it better if you just give them a chance to do that. So bottom line, take care of your employees and they'll take care of you.
It's actually, we have data, when the slide works, that actually supports that shows that the more engaged your employees are, the greater the profit, the greater the productivity, and the greater the satisfaction. Probably, in fact, not probably, I know one of the goals when we work with clients, one of the goals that's always part of the strategic plan has to do with employee engagement or quote-unquote best place to work. So that's always one of the things that we're focused on because it drives everything else. You know, if you have engaged employees, your strategic planning process will be better. Your operational process will be, your sales process will be better. It all links together. Okay.
You'll draw new people in from other companies just simply because of the esprit de corps and the positiveness of your organization. So you'll maintain the best people possible.
And you won't lose them at the same time, right? Again, you won't lose them. So let's summarize here, right? We've gone through, you know, what the situation is. We talked about the need for strategic planning, but let's just skip that. Let's just put it all together ourselves, which we think we did, and identify what those 4 goals are. And so in summary, you know, first of all, again, growth and performance is relative to your competition. So those companies that are doing more and better are going to outperform you, and they're going to be more successful. And they will win more. There are a lot of common challenges. These 4 goals, which you see here, is same goals and challenges we see across many companies. So, you know, targeting niche customers, differentiating your products and services, improving performance through S&OP, and building a highly engaged workforce. Now, these aren't the only 4 goals we think companies should focus on. You need to take, you know, your situation, your company, and match that up with the environment and what you're trying to achieve and see where these goals fit for you, if at all. But we see this theme across most of the companies we're working with. They need more customers. They need better differentiation. They need to improve their profits in their operating processes, and they need to improve their people. So you get the balance, you get the foundation, you get targeting, you know, the challenges that we're facing. And that's where, you know, these 4 goals came from. So let me ask, I got another poll though we're going to ask. And so my question is, going forward here, you know, what's the challenge that you're going to have? You know, I'm going to say implementing these goals, but it may be that, hey, my goals are already set. So you should see the poll up if you would just start click on which one you think is more appropriate to you. I already got my goals, Chris. We're way ahead of you. I'm listening in today to see if you guys know what you're doing. We don't have a process, so how would we fit that in? You know, which ones do you focus on? We're not sure where to start. Obviously, you got the time issue. Everyone's got a time issue. Or, hey, these goals don't make sense for us. We've got it figured out, and this doesn't make sense. So please click on an answer. I've got actually 5 minutes left in the webinar. We're going to do this, and then we're just going to wrap up. If you do have questions, by the way, that you want to share, or questions you want to ask, I guess, you can type them in that question box. There's a bunch here we're going to try to get to, and we'll answer those. All right, I'm going to close this up right now, and you can take a look at what the challenges are. I'll let George and Paul take a quick look and see if you have a comment on them.
It's about right where I thought it would be.
Yeah, same here. That's
Sorry, George, what'd you say?
I say it's just about right where I thought it would be.
You did, huh? We should have put a money on that.
I'd
Which
be
ones
glad
to focus
on
on?
The next go round.
Well, okay, so they don't make sense for us. We're getting in the right directions, right? That's good. And they're not using too much of an excuse of time, so it's which ones do you decide on? Some of them have them already set, and others don't have a process, right? So there's a couple challenges in there, I think, that everybody is facing. Which ones to focus on is...
Sorry. One of my comments there would be those who are looking to decide which ones to focus on, where they could get a big force multiplier and bang for their buck, would be to have, a goal strategy process. And that probably explains a big reason why they're confronted with this decision.
They're probably answering, geez, I want to answer the second one. We don't have a process, which means we can't decide which one to focus on, right?
Sure.
Well, so let's try to help them, right? So what do they need to do next? They need to take these insights, right? These are 4 goals. We think, from our experience in the industry, you should implement 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those. You need to pull those into your process. Those that don't have a process, that's number B, align your team in the need to have a more formal process. Kind of to Paul's comment, you need a process to decide what the priority is for these goals, but you also need to personalize them. We're pretty macro here of customer segmentation and sales and operations planning differentiation. You need to pull this back and make it more personal. I will share with you, as you heard earlier, that we'll be at NASGW. We're going to be talking about and presenting a little about scope. You should see an email probably next week if you want to schedule meetings with us to talk about this in more detail. We'd be happy to do that. The other thing I want to leave you with, kind of going back to the beginning where we started, which is you make a difference on the performance of your company. We kind of had a little debate internally, putting this up because we don't want it to be, any sales oriented. But the first question I think you need to ask yourself and ask the company is that what level of performance do you want your company to be at? Most companies probably in this B, maybe, C level performance. And if everybody's there, then you're all in the same performance level. Do you want to be, an Olympic, gold shoe? Do you want to make the Olympics? Do you want to be in the minor league, or you're just happy playing in clubs or with the old folks on weekends? At what level of performance do you want to get to? No one, I don't know of any, but my major assumption is that no one's made the Olympics or an A team without some coaching. And so if you want to get higher, you may need a coach. You may need some expert guidance. And, we can help you with a lot of things, but there's probably other things you use people for, or experts in your business, whether it be HR or legal or technology. If you need business help, think about when you need it and then ask for it. Whether it be us or anybody else, if you want to be a high level of performance, you need to ask for that help. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck. In fact, the term I use is what I call comfortably stuck. They want to be higher, but they're not as enough pain that they need to kick it into gear. So I'd leave that with you there. And then really just to wrap up, we've got a few questions, guys, but it's 1:59 Eastern my time, so I'm going to probably have to suggest that we give these answers through email or maybe a phone call. Anything you guys want to say before I wrap up? Paul, anything you want to add?
No, I'm good, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
George, anything you want to say before I wrap up?
I just want to say, keep your ear to the ground, folks, and be flexible. Be willing to communicate and take that extra mile, but listen to what's going on in the current world and be able to respond accordingly. And I think that'll help you be as successful as you possibly can be.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Paul, for joining us today. Thanks, NASGW, and thank you for listening. Hopefully take this information, go make a positive impact on your business. If you need help from us, here's our contact information. You can reach out. So thank you very much, and I'm going to end it here. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening.